D'Angelo. Right when we finished pre-recording my show, Nightcap, is when we heard about your passing. So this is a little special edition that I'm doing. It's a little noisy. I'm at the airport, so forgive me. But I just want to say thank you, first and foremost, for the legacy that you left behind. Your music defined a generation. It was the vibe, the energy, the edge, all the things. And I know there are a lot of women right now rewatching How Does It Feel? I'm going to be one of those women tonight when I land. So I'm choosing to celebrate you, D'Angelo, through joy, because there's so much sadness right now, and this is a hard loss. I choose to celebrate you through your music. And to say cheers, because you left behind one hell of a legacy, sir. Rest now.
We're back. It feels so good to be back in the chair. Thank you so much for everyone who was so supportive with the 9/11 24 Years Later special. We put a lot of heart, sweat, and tears into it, and we just want to say thank you. We took a little bit of a hiatus, but we are back in full force. Last week I had a little bit of a mini interview, but today we are full throttle. We are doing an entire nightcap episode for you all tonight. And I'm very excited, not just to be back amongst you all, but I'm very excited about tonight's guest. However, I am not excited about some things that are going on in the country. I am very worried about things that are happening domestic and abroad. As you all know, I am a national security and foreign policy person. So my ears always perk up when there's anything about security here and abroad. So what's been happening since the last time we sat down and we talked, y'all? Few things, and say nothing of the shutdown. We'll get to that. We will get to the shutdown, I promise you. All right. So the White House has a new war, y'all. And this time it's not overseas. It's right here at home. So President Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, NSPM-7, as what we would say colloquially. A sweeping order to counter domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Sounds good until you read the fine print. I went to UCLA, y'all. And in that environment, you are very well aware of how this can go left. And I'll get into that.
This is Nightcap with Dr. Nola Haynes, streaming only on the Persist network.
Hey, y'all. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Nola Haynes, your favorite political scientist. Tonight, we are keeping it real, keeping it global, and keeping it cute. But don't get it twisted. The stakes are serious. So grab your glass, silence the group chat, and let's get into this late night convo. This is Nightcap. If you're catching us on YouTube, hit subscribe and ring that bell. All right. NSPM-7 directs the Department of Justice, y'all, stay with me, Homeland Security, Treasury, and even the IRS to work together to hunt not just the shooters or rioters, but the entire ecosystem behind them. Funders, organizers, nonprofits, anyone the government decides is enabling violence. Anyone at the government decides. Legally or just decides? We don't know. So translation, this memo gives the federal government permission to trace every post, payment, and protest back to the people who made it possible and call that terrorism. So if the government doesn't like you as a group, as an organization, you can be labeled a terrorist. This isn't the first time that the Trump administration has rolled out that particular tactic. But now it's definitely heating up. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because, as I mentioned, I went to UCLA. And one of the things you know about historically when you go to UCLA or Berkeley is you get the whole kind of background of how the FBI had a a program called COINTELPRO, a counterintelligence program used to spy on Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Black Panthers. Specifically at UCLA, 2 Black Panthers were killed in what is now called Campbell Hall. And it was a direct consequence of COINTELPRO. The stated goal back then was to stop the rise of what they called a Black Messiah. Some of you may have seen that movie. If you haven't, you should. Fast forward to 2025, different names, same playbook. Label the movement a threat, right? Collapse protest into chaos. Use the machinery of the state to silence the dissenters. Now let's follow the money. The most dangerous part isn't even the rhetoric, it's the reach. By pulling in Treasury and the IRS, the memo makes financial audits a counter-terror tool. Now, for those of you who watched the 24 years later 9/11 special, we had a specialist from DOJ who did financial crimes, and we had a conversation about how this part, to catch terrorists, tracking their money has been a very beneficial tool. But what we are talking about here is not necessarily some global transnational terrorism group. We are talking about groups here at home that our current administration could just label a terrorist. So that means that the very same community organizations raising bail funds, feeding families, or training future leaders could find their donations flagged as radical money flows. The same financial systems that helped us survive the pandemic can now be used to watch us. And let's be real, whenever America tightens its definition of who counts as a threat, women and people of color feel it first. The data is shrinking in boardrooms. I can attest to that. In newsroom and in politics. When they rise up, they're labeled angry. We're labeled angry, radical, or even divisive. The same government that says it's fighting extremists is only watching the women who organize, the mothers who march, the students who tweet "Me Too," say her name, or Roe v. Wade. Power is always policed when it belongs to the people. So here's the bigger picture. NSPM-7 isn't just a security policy, y'all. It's a cultural signal. It says we don't just want order, we want obedience. It takes the tools built to fight terrorists abroad and points to them as organizers at home. And in that climate, who dares to lead? Who dares to speak truth, to publish hard data about inequality, to build power when power itself is being criminalized? Watch this space. As we come forward, our next guest knows that fight firsthand. She's been tracking how women's influence, pay, and political voice rise, and how quickly we get attacked. I'm saying we because I am living through this. As I am speaking to you right now, this is my lived experience in DC. So Dr. C. Nicole Mason is the founder of Future Forward Women and the author of Born Bright, a young girl's journey from nothing to something in America. Her latest report, the Women's Power and Influence Index, charts exactly what happens when women demand a seat at the table and why some would rather burn the table down than share it. When you call everyone a terrorist, the only people left unafraid to speak are the ones in power. Dr. C. Nicole Mason joins us to talk about what it means to hold power as a woman in a moment when even power itself feels like a crime. Thank you for joining us on Nightcap tonight, y'all. And welcome to our wonderful guest, Dr.
Hi.
And welcome.
I'm really excited to be here. Hi, Nola. How are you? Just listening to that opening segment, it is a really scary time. It's a really scary time. So I'm glad that you are ringing the bell, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. And I'm really excited to talk to you because I am literally living this. This is my life. It's one thing when the administration you want to win doesn't win, and you just kind of go off and, go into other sectors. but those sectors aren't picking up Black women specifically. I can't tell you how many conversations and interviews I've had, since the election. And let me know if you've come across this. What I'm coming across is being called partisan, which is a new code word for Black. Black women especially. So yeah, let's dig into this.
Nola, I just want to say, about a couple of weeks ago, I had written this article that talked exactly about what you're saying. I said, the title of the article is like, is it me or are Black women having a tough time right now? And I tried to frame out what was happening, because I think it's really important for us to connect the dots. So we hear that 300,000 Black women have left the labor force. We hear that Letitia James, Fannie Willis, and others are being attacked, and
list goes on.
The list goes on. And what I wanted to say and think about is say, hey, this is not arbitrary. This is not, yes, it's a personal vendetta, but this is really consequential, because Black women were the first ones to hold or try to attempt to hold Trump accountable. We are the largest Democratic voting bloc. And when we are weaker, when we are unprotected, then everyone else is less safe. And so really wanting to talk about that. So your experience, my own experience, what we're seeing, again, is not arbitrary. It is very, very, very much calculated.
Absolutely. I mean, strategically, it makes sense. You want to take out, your most ardent adversaries, the ones you fear the most, right? You want to kneecap them. You want to make sure that they don't have any infrastructure. You want to make sure they don't have any, financial infrastructure. You just want to completely just chip away at it. I have this concept where I say, Black women, that we are visible and invisible at the same time, right? Because I think some of this, they think that we're low-hanging fruit, but we're not. Clearly, we are clearly a problem, which is why they are working so hard, to make sure that we are temporarily or long-term gutted, that we can't stand up and fight, that we can't do the things that we have been doing. But the joke's on them, because our ancestors, honey, been doing more with less.
No, Nola, we do more with less. And right, so that is true. We Black women, we mobilize, we show up when things go down, when things go wrong. We're the first persons or the first people they call to clean up the mess. And we are the most unprotected in this work. And by that, I mean, we see what's happening with Tish James. There is not an outpouring of people in defense of her. The people who are standing up for her right now are Black women. So we will stand up for ourselves. We will protect ourselves. But when we get left holding the bag, or when something happens to us, we are the ones who are left out to dry. And we even think about that after the 2024 election cycle. Kamala stepped in when the Democratic Party was in disarray. We were hopeless. Voters were hopeless. And she injected hope, enthusiasm into the race. She was crisscrossing this country. And after the election, after she lost, it was like it never happened. People were talking about her as if she had run this rack attack campaign or rode down on an escalator. Right. And in fact, her campaign was brilliant, and Black women and women were fueling that campaign. And so I do think we're going to continue to do the work, but at the same time, I have to ask, how much longer can we continue to go on like this? And when you think about the women who have left the workforce, the 300,000, we think about you, we think about me, and we think about the hard time we're having. I want to say, what is the strategy around that for Democrats? Because they will be back. looking at for us in 2027, because we're the ones who knock on the doors. But in this interim, I am actually wondering, like, where are you? Where are the people? So.
I agree. And I've had so many conversations with women in my life around this. And I'm curious, so did you, obviously you couldn't have known what the current state was going to be, but tell us a little bit about the origin story of Future Forward Women, why you founded it, and what role the organization plays now in these challenging times.
Well, again, we started off in this very oh my God, alarmist space, but Future Forward is an effort, an initiative to build women's power and influence, because I really want to win. When I looked out and I saw what happened in 2024, but even before that, and when we didn't get Build Back Better, when we wanted universal child care, and I kept thinking, why do we keep losing? Why? We have the data that supports the policies. We know that it's smart, but we are not getting what we want. And to me, it all came down to power. We don't have enough power, at least enough power to beat back harmful policies, to pass the policies and legislation that we want, and also elect a woman president. So collectively, I was looking and thinking, what might we change? What might we do differently? So Future Forward Women is about building women's influence and power, but it's also a legislative exchange and innovation lab, because so think about it like ALEC for progressives, right? So what kind of policies do we want? Dream big, start with the end in mind, and start creating those things, start shifting the narrative so that we can build the public will, so that we can have and get the policies that we want, instead of reacting to bad policies and trying to beat back harmful policies. So it's a proactive strategy. So I'm really excited about that and thinking about how we do this work differently.
As a strategist, that excites me. I'm all for hearing what the issues are, what the problems are. Okay, how are we going to solve it? So having a strategy forward approach, that definitely makes me happy. And it also makes me want to get into this incredible report, the Women's Power and Influence Index. Tell us a bit about the top line findings, including how do we retain our power as women in this time?
So Nola, just like you, I'm a political scientist, and I'm also a nerd, a researcher. So when I was thinking about women's power and influence, I really wanted to understand, well, what kind of power do women have across, in the US or across the states? And so I set out to map it. So looking at political influence, public policy, well-being indicators, economic security, health, putting that all together and seeing where women stood in each state. And what we found was really very interesting. And one of the top lines from the report is that women's power and influence is directly shaped by where they live. So you can have a set of rights in Maryland, and then you can go to Iowa as a woman and have a different set of rights. And we haven't seen that, Nola, I'm going to say this, in more than 400 years. The last time we saw this was, when Black people were slaves, when we were enslaved, where your rights were based on the state that you lived in or the state you could get to. And when we look at women, when we look at reproductive rights, we look at their economic power and their influence, you have to understand that geographic boundaries where you live determines the rights that you have. And to me, that's pretty problematic.
Yeah, that's regressive.
It's regressive. It is very regressive. And so I wanted to tell that story, which how do we think about building women's power and influence? And the other top line that we found is that states that had women and family-friendly policies, we looked at 9 policies. So from paid family and sick, paid family leave or paid medical leave, pay transparency, sexual harassments, good reproductive laws. Those were the states where women were thriving. And then when you look at the bottom list, the bottom half of the index, those laws, protections were missing, and women were worse off. And so there's a real connection and correlation between those bundle of policies and rights and how women are doing in those states. So I'll stop there. There's a lot to say, but about it. But it was really eye-opening.
Yeah, definitely eye-opening. And I'm very grateful that you are doing this work, because one of the things that I find as a political scientist, being in this kind of new media space, what I've given a lot of thought about is how to make expertise the thing that helps you grow your profile. And what I mean by that is, and you'll understand this, for so many years, I know I personally struggled with hiding my media life. When I was in my PhD program, you just don't do media when you are a PhD student or candidate. That's not the hierarchy, right? But in this new media space that has been emerging through independent media for quite some time, we are building infrastructure to where people like you, people like me, myself, we can have profiles. We can speak to audiences outside of classrooms, right? And one of the things for our show is the role of new media in our politics and culture today. So how do you and your organization use new media and digital media to inform people about your very important work? And how are people responding to it?
So I'll start with the first part of your question. So first of all, one of the things that has always and continues to frustrate me, and before Future Forward, I have been in the policy space. I ran the Institute for Women's Policy Research, a think tank in DC. And I would say, well, if you're doing all this great research, but nobody's reading it, who cares?
That part.
Who cares? And so one of the things that I've always tried to do is to break out of the echo chamber that is inside of the Beltway and bring people into the conversation by using language that is accessible, talking in a way about an issue smartly, but in a way that people can connect up with their own experiences. I think that's really, really important. And so when I think about the new media landscape, it feels like the wild, wild west right now.
It does.
Some voices have to say we can do without. There's a lot of noise, but
everyone doesn't need a podcast.
Everybody doesn't need a podcast or a Substack or I don't know what everybody feels like they can get in here. But I think the most powerful voices in this new media landscape are able to take data or information, synthesize it in a way that connects to people's real experiences, and put it out there in a way that brings people in and make sure that the perspective that often gets left out of the mainstream media, that we're telling those stories and having that interesting take. So these sharp takes, these very insightful takes. And in our work at Future Forward and my own work as a writer, I really try to do that and say, well, that you're saying you don't know why this is happening, but I know that my experience as a Black woman, as a woman who has been doing this work for more than 2 decades, I might have a different take, and we might have a different explanation about why something is happening. And I think that's really great and what we need. At the same time, I do believe I love this new media landscape. And I also am very clear about the disappearance of Black voices, Black women voices, women of color voices in mainstream media. And I think that that's very deliberate. And I also believe that means that our perspective, our take, our visibility, we have less of that in a bigger way in the national landscape. It's harder. I mean, Nola, it's really hard in this new media landscape to build up and build out.
It is.
As a Black woman creator.
And I'll tell you, oh my God, this is gonna make you chuckle. So I'm on Roland Martin every Thursday. And so we say that Thursday night is like the latest night on Roland Martin. And there is always a conversation on Threads or Blue Sky with fans wondering if I'm gonna cuss. It's like a huge thing. There's so many people in the new media world. They are themselves, honey. They don't care. There are no filters, baby. They gonna say what they gonna say, right? But I always make this joke, not joking, that one day when I'm getting Senate confirmed, I don't want nobody pulling up something while I'm cussing somebody out, So I find, I know.
But let me just tell you something. At this point, there are no rules.
There are no rules.
You obviously can do whatever you want and still be Senate confirmed. Okay, so maybe there's a double standard, or
there is a double standard.
But I mean, the way things are going down these days, it feels like you can do anything, and
you can. But we're strategists and we think in long term. So I'm like, why right now it feels a certain way. Tomorrow it may not. So
I will. You play a clip for me, I have several for you. So.
All right. Well, okay. They're telling me we have to wrap up, but I want to get this last question in. This question is about you, because I feel like so many of these conversations are about the work. What you doing, sis? What you doing? What you working on? Your work is incredible and inspiring, and you're tackling huge and critical issues during an immensely stressful time. What do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, I mean, again, if you would have caught me a few years ago when I was in this really big job and working around the clock, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating well. I didn't look good. And if you fast forward from then into now, I have learned to say no, put myself first, and enjoy my family, my life, and all the things that I've created and built, and also to have boundaries. It's been really great. So I find joy in connecting. I do love doing this work, but not doing it in a way that exhausts me or fatigues me, or where I don't feel like I'm getting a return on the investment that I'm giving. So I'm very clear about it's reciprocal. And I think Black women need to be clear in this moment that nobody gets your labor for free. It needs to be reciprocal. If I have your back when things are going on, that when things go on for me, you need to have my back. And if I don't know that, then I'm going to have to step to the side or do something differently.
All right, Nightcapper. So you heard Dr. Mason. No is a complete sentence and reciprocity. Okay. Like I low key wanted my director to play Lauryn Hill in the background, low key, but reciprocity is important. Absolutely. I enjoyed this conversation and I wish we had more time. I'm actually running out to the airport. Otherwise I would try to squeeze 10 more minutes with you, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about.
We do.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with you. And I know our paths will cross again soon. Safe travels.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mason. And we will definitely have you back, because I want to continue this conversation about women. So thank you, Dr. C. Nicole Mason, Nightcappers. That was an incredible conversation. Per usual, we never have enough time. But before I let you go, Nightcappers, there's something that I want to talk to you all about tonight. So many of you have reached out to me asking about my thoughts and feelings about the ceasefire. I shared some thoughts last week when it was happening on Threads, but many of you know, not everyone, I had a death in a family last week, and it really unmoored me. And I'm also traveling now So between, the death in my family, getting ready for this trip, I really haven't had a lot of time to think about a long analysis, but I do want to share something kind of like my initial gut reaction, but I will offer a longer analysis because this is a situation that I'm not going to keep my eye, that I'm going to continue to keep my eye on. This is ongoing. So because it's ongoing, and I personally believe there are going to be a lot of moments around this ceasefire, this will not be the last time I'm talking to you all about this. So here are some of my initial thoughts on the ceasefire. Like I said, I'm going to offer more complete thoughts in a few days when my grief and travel schedule aren't dominating. But I do want to say this. I am overjoyed that families are reunited. I had a very tertiary experience of when Brittany Griner was imprisoned in Russia. And I remember being brought into some of conversations and some briefings, and the work to free people who are jailed for whatever reason, or who are being held prisoner for whatever reason. It's exhaustive. They are in contact with the families, so they are getting the pressure from the families. There's political pressure. It's no joke. So while I am overjoyed the families are reunited, and I also want to send a huge thank you to folks who negotiated their freedom, because they are also part of this story, I do want to offer caution. As many are celebrating Trump's big win, that isn't necessarily Trump's big win. I don't have time to get into that, but I do want to talk to you all a little bit about what was happening in the last administration regarding this proposed peace plan. This morning, I woke up to reporting from Al Jazeera that Gazans are being shot. So this is what's on my mind. Since the beginning, we were warned that Hamas embedded themselves with civilians. If that's so, what protocols are in place to protect civilians already devastated and traumatized? What role will Palestinians have in their own future and deciding their own future? That's what's on my mind. That's what's on my heart. The hostages, and what role will Palestinians have? Self-determining. Will this ceasefire hold? So many questions, and we do not have clear answers yet. So again, this is the caution that I offer. I know that US media, state media, is going to make it seem like this is such a huge, huge win, but let's take it day by day. Let's be cautious. So if tonight reminded you that the power can be policed, then remember, our resistance has to be organized. We have to always move strategically. Follow Dr. Mason and support the work of Future Forward Women. And as always, I'll see you in the comments.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Persist on Substack, YouTube, and Instagram.